Mist clung to the edges of the forest like a thin veil, and the air smelled of damp earth and old stones. Elysia walked slowly along the winding path, her boots crunching softly against fallen leaves. For 10 long years she had hidden from the world, hiding both her scars and the memories that came with them. Each step carried a weight she could not shake, a memory of betrayal, of fire, and of a life torn apart before it truly began. She had learned to live quietly, in the shadows, away from the eyes of men and the whispers of the court. Villagers knew her only as a healer who kept to herself, tending the sick and injured who came to her door. No one knew her story and no one ever asked. It was safer that way, safer to be invisible. But today, she was no longer invisible. The news had come early that morning. A royal messenger had ridden through the village, his black cloak flapping in the wind. He bore a message from the Alpha King Kalen, a ruler whose name was spoken with equal parts awe and fear throughout the kingdom. "The king commands your presence," the message said. "Come at once or face the consequences of disobedience." Elysia had read the words again and again, her hands trembling despite the calm she tried to maintain. She had lived in solitude for a decade to escape men like Kalen, rulers like him who prided themselves on power and dominance. And yet, something in the way his name resonated in her mind made her heart pound with a strange, unwelcome curiosity. She turned her eyes to the mist-shrouded horizon. The road to the castle stretched for miles, and she knew that every step she took would be a step away from the quiet life she had built for herself. And yet she could not ignore the summons. Something deep within her stirred, a flicker of destiny, of something larger than the life she had carved out in hiding. As she entered the forest that bordered the road, shadows seemed to shift around her. The trees whispered with the wind, and the faintest rustle of leaves felt like voices speaking secrets she was not meant to hear. Her scars itched beneath her clothing, a reminder that they were more than marks on her skin. They were symbols of a past that still lived within her. Kalen's castle rose suddenly from the mist, jagged and imposing, its towers cutting into the gray sky like black teeth. She had only seen it from a distance before, when she had dared to peek at the world she had abandoned. Now she would enter it. The thought made her stomach tighten. Inside, the castle was a different world from the quiet woods she had called home. Torchlight flickered along stone walls, casting dancing shadows that seemed almost alive. Servants scurried along the corridors, bowing their heads as she passed. She kept her gaze fixed on the path ahead, refusing to acknowledge their curious looks or whispers. The throne room was vast and cold. A single beam of light fell from a high window, illuminating the raised dais where Kalen sat. Even from a distance, Elysia could feel the weight of his presence. He was a man who seemed to command every corner of the room without speaking, his eyes sharp and unyielding, as if he could see through walls, through people, and through secrets when he spoke. His voice was smooth, low, and controlled. "Elysia," he said, his tone carrying the unmistakable authority of a king. "Do you know why you have been summoned?" Elysia's throat was dry. She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the folds of her cloak. "No, Your Majesty," she replied, her voice small but steady. Kalen's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no anger there. Only a quiet, unsettling curiosity. "You have hidden yourself for 10 years, he said. "You have carried your scars in silence. But silence cannot last forever. I want to see them." The word struck her like a blow. For 10 years she had worn long sleeves, heavy cloaks, and veils to keep the world from seeing her truth. She had buried her shame, her pain, and her history beneath layers of clothing and careful distance. And now the king demanded that she reveal everything. Her mind raced. Could she trust him? Could anyone ever look upon her and see her for who she truly was without judgment? And yet she felt a strange pull toward him, a gravity that was impossible to resist. Something in his gaze told her he was not like others. Something in the way he commanded the room suggested that he might understand the cost of survival, the pain of bearing scars that no one else would see. Elysia took a tentative step forward, then another. Her heart hammered against her chest, and she could feel the warmth of fear and anticipation mingling within her. The court fell silent as she approached the dais. Courtiers and nobles whispered among themselves, their eyes wide with curiosity and, in some cases, thinly veiled amusement. She ignored them. Their opinions no longer mattered. When she reached the foot of the throne, Kalen's gaze held hers. It was intense, almost predatory. Yet it carried a strange softness that confused her. Slowly, carefully, she lifted her hands, the cloak falling back just enough to reveal the faint pale marks that ran across her arms and shoulders. Kaelin's eyes did not flinch. He did not look away. Instead, he leaned forward slightly, examining the scars with a careful, almost reverent attention. "You survived," he said softly, almost to himself. "And yet you carry your past like a chain around your neck." Alicia's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to explain, to demand that he look away, but the words lodged in her throat, caught between fear and a strange, unfamiliar hope. Kaelin stood and descended the steps of the dais with slow, deliberate steps. Each movement carried power and control, yet there was something gentle in the way he approached her. "These scars are not shameful," he said. "They are proof. Proof that you endured. Proof that you are alive when so many would not be. Proof that you have strength." Alicia blinked, unsure if she wanted to cry or flee. Her body had been a map of pain and survival, a testament to years of hiding and self-preservation. And yet here was a man, no, a king, telling her that she was strong, that she was worthy, that her scars were not a curse but a mark of life. She wanted to believe him. More than she wanted anything in the world, she wanted to believe him. But fear had been her constant companion for a decade, and trust did not come easily. Kaelin reached out a hand, not demanding, not commanding, but offering.
"Come with me," he said.
"There is more to your story than you know, and perhaps there is more to me as well than you imagine." Alicia hesitated, torn between the safety of the life she had built in the shadows and the pull of something dangerous, something transformative. Her fingers brushed against his and a shiver ran through her, not from cold, but from the intensity of the connection, the unspoken promise of revelation and reckoning. Outside, the wind howled through the towers, carrying the scent of rain and stone. Inside, the court held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. And in that moment, Alicia realized that hiding had come to an end. She had stepped into the light, and there was no turning back. The king's eyes held hers, steady and unwavering, as if he could see into the very depths of her soul. And for the first time in 10 years, Alicia felt a flicker of hope, terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly consuming. The court whispered again, but their words no longer mattered. All that mattered was the silent understanding passing between the two of them, that scars could not hide the truth forever, and that some destinies demanded revelation, no matter the cost. As Alicia followed Kaelin through the halls of the castle, she felt the weight of her past pressing against her, yet somehow it felt lighter. She did not know what awaited her, or what the king truly intended, but for the first time, she understood that her scars were not only a burden, they might be the key to her freedom. And in the shadows of the great castle, where history and magic whispered through every stone, Alicia knew that her life was about to change forever. The private chamber was silent, lit only by the flickering glow of a few torches mounted on the stone walls. The air smelled faintly of burning wood and old stone, carrying the chill of the castle towers. Alicia's heart pounded so loudly she was certain Kaelin could hear it. Every step she took toward the center of the room felt like walking across a bridge over an endless abyss. Kaelin watched her carefully, his expression calm yet unyielding. "You have hidden yourself for 10 years, he said again, his voice softer this time, almost gentle. "And I have waited for this moment to see what you have carried alone." Alicia swallowed hard, the words catching in her throat. She had long feared this moment. The moment when someone would demand not just the truth of her scars, but the truth of herself. She wanted to run, to vanish back into the forests and shadows, but some part of her, the part that had survived every trial, kept her rooted in place. I cannot," she whispered, her fingers clutching the folds of her cloak. "You don't understand. These scars." Her voice trailed off, and she lowered her gaze. Kaelin took a slow step toward her, each movement deliberate, carrying the weight of command. "I do understand," he said. "I understand more than you think. But hiding will not protect you, not from the world, and not from what lies ahead." Alicia looked up at him, her eyes searching for something, mercy, patience, understanding, but instead, she found a strange intensity that left her breathless. His gaze did not judge her, nor did it mock. It was as if he could see everything she had tried to conceal, and yet, instead of recoiling, he remained calm. I am not ready," she said finally, her voice shaking. "I've spent 10 years hiding, and I don't know if I can. Kalen reached out, his hand hovering just short of hers. You do not have to be ready, he said softly. You only have to trust me. Not because I am king, but because I see you. Not just your scars, but the strength that carries them. That strength. It is rare. Her breath hitched. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever acknowledged her survival as strength rather than weakness. And yet, a whisper of doubt remained in her mind. Could she trust this man whose presence dominated every room, whose very aura spoke of power and danger? Kalen stepped closer, his shadow falling across the room like a protective shield. Alicia, he said, if you continue to hide, you will remain trapped. The world does not wait for those who hide, and neither do the forces that watch us from the shadows. But if you show me everything, perhaps we can face what comes together. The words hung in the air, a challenge and a promise at once. Alicia's fingers trembled as she slowly unclasped the cloak around her shoulders. It fell to the floor in a soft whisper, revealing the pale, jagged scars that ran across her arms and chest. Kalen's eyes did not falter. He studied each mark, his expression calm, respectful, almost reverent. You survived fire and betrayal, and yet you stand before me, he said quietly. These scars, they are not shameful. They are proof of your endurance, proof of the battles you have won when no one else would. Alicia felt a shiver run through her body, not from cold, but from the weight of his words. For 10 years she had hidden, convinced that no one could see her as she was, and now here was a man, a king, telling her that her scars were not a curse but a testament. I don't know if I can trust that, she whispered. I've been alone for so long, it isn't easy for me. Kalen's gaze softened, and for the first time a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Trust is never easy, he said. Not for anyone, but you have survived alone, and that alone is proof that you are stronger than you know, and perhaps together we can be stronger still. He extended his hand once more, this time closer, almost daring her to reach for it. Alicia's heart raced. The pull between them was undeniable, an invisible thread connecting two souls who had both been marked by life and loss. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his. His touch was firm yet gentle, steadying her, anchoring her in the room. The connection was immediate and electric, yet calm at the same time. It was as if a long-forgotten part of her, buried under years of fear and solitude, had awakened. She felt the weight of her past pressing against her, yet it no longer seemed suffocating. Instead, it felt like a force she could harness, a power that could no longer be denied. You carry more than scars, Kalen said softly. You carry a story, a strength, and perhaps a destiny. Alicia's fingers tightened around his. Destiny? She repeated, the word strange and foreign on her tongue. I don't understand. Kalen's eyes darkened with intensity. There are forces at work in this kingdom, he said, his voice low and controlled. Forces that watch, that wait, that prey upon weakness. Your scars, they are connected to something far older than either of us, something that could shape the fate of all who live here. Alicia's mind reeled. For 10 years she had believed that her past had ended when the fire took everything from her. She had believed that hiding would keep her safe. And now she realized that the past had not ended. It had been waiting, shaping her, preparing her for a moment like this. What do you mean? She asked, fear and curiosity mixing in her voice. Kalen studied her for a long moment, his hand still holding hers. Some scars are more than skin deep, he said. They carry power, magic, prophecy, and danger. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago, and I cannot protect you unless you show me everything. Alicia's breath caught in her throat. She had lived her life in the shadows, hiding her truth from everyone. She had feared that revealing herself would bring judgment, scorn, or worse, but in Kalen's gaze she saw none of that. There was only recognition, and a strange, dangerous tenderness. Slowly she nodded, though her heart still trembled with uncertainty. I will try, she whispered. Kalen's grip tightened ever so slightly, a silent reassurance. That is all I ask, he said. And know this, your strength is not in hiding. It is in standing, even when the world has tried to break you. As she stood there hand in hand with the king, Alicia felt a strange calm settling over her. She had faced fire, betrayal, and loss. She had survived. And now, standing in the presence of a man who saw her not as a broken woman, but as someone whole, she felt the first flicker of hope she had allowed herself in 10 long years. The torches flickered, casting dancing shadows across the room, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind howled through the castle towers, carrying the scent of rain and stone. Inside, time seemed to slow, and Elysia realized that she was no longer hiding. She was seen. Fully. Kaylin's eyes held hers, unwavering, as if reading the deepest corners of her soul. And for the first time, Elysia felt the stirrings of something she had thought lost forever: connection, trust, and perhaps even belonging. Yet even as a fragile hope began to grow within her, a shadow moved in the corner of the room. A subtle shift, almost imperceptible. The air grew colder and the torch flames flickered wildly. Elysia felt a chill run down her spine. Something ancient, something unseen was stirring. Kaylin noticed it too, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. "You are not alone here," he said quietly. "And your scars. They are not only a mark of the past, they are a key. Something in you is awakening, whether you know it or not." Elysia swallowed hard. The calm she had felt moments before now seemed fragile, like a thin thread in a storm. She did not understand what he meant, but she knew the truth in his words. Her scars had survived fires, battles, and betrayal, and now it seemed they had a destiny she had yet to comprehend. Kaylin stepped closer, his presence a shield against the chill that swept through the room. "Whatever comes," he said, "we will face it together. But you must be willing to see yourself clearly, and to trust me fully. Can you do that?" Elysia's hand tightened around his. Her mind raced with memories of the past 10 years. Pain, solitude, fear. And yet beneath it all, a spark of courage she had almost forgotten flickered. She met his gaze steadily. I will try," she said, her voice firmer this time. "I will try to trust you." Kaylin inclined his head, a faint smile touching his lips. "Then the next step begins," he said. "And it will not be easy. But it is the only way forward for you and for the kingdom." Elysia drew a deep breath, feeling the weight of the years on her shoulders and the strange, unspoken promise of something greater awaiting her. She did not yet know what the future held, but for the first time she realized that she did not have to face it alone. The chamber was silent again, save for the flickering of the torches. And in that silence, a new understanding settled between them. A fragile, potent bond forged not by proximity, but by recognition, courage, and the first stirrings of trust. The corridors of the castle seemed endless, twisting and turning like the veins of an ancient living creature. Elysia followed Kaylin through the stone hallways, her cloak trailing softly behind her, the torchlight casting long shadows on the walls. Every step echoed against the stone, and each echo seemed to whisper reminders of the life she had tried to leave behind. Kaylin walked with measured grace, his presence commanding and calm. Yet when he glanced at her from the corner of his eye, there was something softer, an unspoken understanding, as if he carried the weight of knowing what it meant to survive scars both seen and hidden. They entered a smaller chamber, a quiet room with high windows that let in a pale gray light. A fireplace stood at the far end, its embers glowing faintly, warming the room just enough to cut through the chill of the stone walls. Kaylin gestured for Elysia to sit, and she did so, her fingers clasped tightly in her lap. "You should rest," he said, his voice steady, commanding yet not unkind. "The journey here was long, and the court, it is not always kind to those who carry truths others fear to see." Elysia's lips curved in a small, almost bitter smile. "Kindness is rare," she said softly. "Even in villages, even in the quietest places, people are quick to judge what they cannot understand." Kaylin nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "And yet here you are. You survived. You are not only strong, you are remarkable." The words made her stomach tighten. She wanted to protest, to tell him that strength was nothing but survival, that the scars on her arms and chest were proof of loss, pain and solitude, not triumph. But the intensity of his gaze held her, compelling her to listen, to believe, even if only a little. "Why do you care so much about scars?" she asked quietly, her voice uncertain. Most men, most people, would see them and look away, or worse, laugh. Kaylin tilted his head, considering her words. "Scars tell a story," he said. "They are proof that someone has faced the fire and walked through it. They carry strength, wisdom, and survival. I do not see weakness in them. I see life, and I respect it." Elysia's heart fluttered. She had spent years hiding, fearing the judgment of others, and yet here was a man, no, a king, who regarded her survival with reverence rather than disdain. It was almost too much to comprehend. Before she could reply, a sudden noise echoed through the hall outside the chamber, a muted scuffle, the faint scrape of metal on stone. Both of them turned, alert. Kaelin's expression sharpened immediately, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of the sword at his side. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. Without waiting for a response, he moved toward the door with the speed and precision of a predator. Elysia's pulse quickened as she watched him disappear into the shadows. Moments later, Kaelin returned, his expression controlled but with a hint of tension. "A servant stumbled," he said simply. "Nothing more. But the court is watching you. They do not understand, and they will not until they see what I see." Elysia nodded, though her mind raced. She had always known that the court could be cruel, that gossip and suspicion followed anyone who dared to stand apart, and now she understood that her life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer alone in the shadows. She had entered a world that would not let her remain hidden. "Do they frighten you?" Kaelin asked quietly, stepping closer. His presence filled the room, his eyes meeting hers with a weight that made her heart race. "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But more than them, I'm afraid of myself, of what I carry, of what my scars mean." Kaelin reached out, placing his hand over hers. The warmth of his touch contrasted with the chill of the stone walls, and she felt a strange calm wash over her. "Your scars mean survival," he said. "They mean that you are stronger than anyone who could judge you. And if you allow it, they mean that you could be more than anyone has ever believed." Elysia's eyes filled with a mixture of fear and awe. She had spent a decade in exile, teaching herself to survive, to hide, to be invisible. And yet here was a man, a king, telling her that her hidden strength could be a force for something greater. The thought terrified her, but it also ignited a spark she had long buried. "Greater?" she asked softly, almost afraid to speak the word. "What do you mean?" Kaelin's gaze darkened with intensity. "The kingdom is not as safe as it seems," he said. "There are forces watching us, ancient and patient. Forces that sense power and will strike at weakness. Your survival, your scars, they are connected to something older than the throne itself. And if you learn to embrace them, you might change everything." Elysia felt a shiver run down her spine. The words carried a weight she had never imagined. She had thought her scars marked only pain and loss. She had never considered that they could hold power, or that she might be tied to something far larger than herself. She began, but her voice faltered. She did not know what to say. How could she begin to understand what she had never been allowed to know? Kaelin stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I will help you," he said. "But you must allow me to. You must trust me to guide you even when the path is dangerous." Elysia's hand trembled beneath his, yet she did not pull away. Something about his presence, the steady confidence in his voice, and the unwavering strength in his eyes drew her in. She wanted to believe him, to let him in, not just into her life, but into the deepest, most hidden parts of her soul. "Why? Why me?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "Why do you care so much about me?" Kaelin paused, his eyes searching hers as if weighing the right words. "Because you have survived when others would have fallen," he said finally. "Because you have strength, courage, and wisdom that the world needs. And because I see you, not just the scars, but the person beneath them. And that person is extraordinary." Elysia's breath caught. No one had ever looked at her this way. No one had ever acknowledged her existence so fully, so completely. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear, hope, and something she could not yet name. For a long moment they stood in silence, the only sound the faint crackle of the fireplace, and then a soft rustling came from the shadows near the windows. Elysia stiffened, her hand tightening around Kaelin's. From the corner of the room, a shadow shifted, a presence that felt older than the castle itself, older than the kingdom. A low hum seemed to resonate through the stones, vibrating faintly against her skin. Elysia felt a strange pull, as if the air itself were alive with something ancient and watchful. Kaelin noticed it immediately, his hand tightening around hers instinctively. "Do not fear it," he said quietly, though his eyes scanned the room with precision. "But be aware, something is stirring, something that knows you are no longer hidden." Elysia's pulse quickened. She had always feared the unknown, feared the forces she could not see or control, And now it seemed those forces were aware of her presence. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. What? What is it? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kalen's gaze softened as he knelt slightly to meet her eye level. It is part of your past and part of your future, he said. Something older than either of us. You carry it in your scars, in your survival, in the choices you have made, and now it is awakening. Elysia shivered, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. She had survived alone for 10 years, hiding from the world and from herself. And yet now it seemed hiding was no longer possible. She could feel the stirrings of something within her. A power, a truth, a destiny she had never imagined. Kalen rose to his full height, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Whatever comes, he said, his voice steady and sure, we face it together. But you must be willing to embrace yourself fully, scars and all. Only then can you see your strength, and perhaps even change the fate of the kingdom. Elysia met his gaze, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her like a storm. She did not know what the future held or what power slept within her scars, but for the first time in 10 years she felt something fragile yet undeniable. Hope. She nodded slowly, her heart pounding. I will try, she said, her voice firmer now, carrying a hint of determination. I will try to embrace it, to face it. Kalen's lips curved into a faint, approving smile. Then we begin, he said. And you must understand, the path ahead will test you, not just your body but your mind and your heart, but I will be with you every step of the way. Elysia drew a deep breath, feeling the strange mixture of fear and anticipation swirl within her. She had survived fire, betrayal, and loss. She had hidden from the world for 10 years. And now, standing in the presence of a man who saw her truth and did not flinch, she felt the stirrings of courage, strength, and a destiny she had never dared to imagine. The room seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, the shadows shifting in the flickering torchlight. Outside, the wind howled through the castle towers, carrying whispers of ancient power and old secrets. And in the midst of it, Elysia realized that her life and her destiny was no longer her own to hide. The sudden tremor shook the castle walls, rattling torches and sending dust falling from the stone arches. Elysia's heart raced as the shadowy figure stepped forward from the darkness. A tall, silent figure cloaked in black, its presence radiating an unnatural, ancient power. The air seemed to hum, vibrating against her skin as if the stones themselves were alive. Kalen moved instinctively in front of her, hand gripping the hilt of his sword. His eyes scanned the room with sharp precision, every muscle coiled in readiness. It has found you, he whispered, his voice low and steady. And it knows you are ready, whether you like it or not. Elysia's gaze flicked to the figure, fear and awe mingling in her chest. Her scars tingled with an unfamiliar warmth, a faint glow that made her skin prickle. She had never felt anything like it before. It was as if the marks she had hidden for 10 years were alive, responding to the presence of this being. I don't understand, she stammered, her voice shaking. What is it? Kalen's jaw tightened. It is part of the past that has waited for you. Part of your destiny that is older than the kingdom. And now, it has come to awaken what you carry inside. The figure moved closer, silent as the shadows themselves. Its face was hidden beneath a dark hood, but Elysia felt its gaze as a tangible force, pressing against her chest and tugging at something deep within. Her breath hitched as the warmth in her scars spread, a gentle pulse that seemed to call to her very soul. Kalen's hand brushed hers briefly, grounding her. Do not fear it, he said. You survived fire. You survived betrayal. This is merely another trial, but this one requires more than courage. It requires you to believe in yourself. Elysia nodded, though doubt flickered in her mind. She had spent 10 years believing that her scars were marks of weakness, of loss. Could they really hold power? Could she really trust what stirred inside her? The shadow lifted a hand, and the air in the chamber grew heavier. A low, resonant hum filled the space, vibrating through the stones and deep into Elysia's bones. The glow of her scars intensified, spilling softly across her skin like liquid light. She felt a surge of energy that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Kalen's eyes narrowed. It is testing you, he said. Do not resist. Let it awaken what is inside you. Elysia drew a deep breath, closing her eyes. She let herself feel the warmth in her scars, the pulse that had been dormant for so long. She thought of the years she had hidden, the solitude she had endured, and the strength she had found in surviving. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, she opened herself to the energy, letting it flow through her. A soft light began to swirl around her, gentle at first, then growing brighter, illuminating the chamber with a warm, ethereal glow. The shadow recoiled slightly, its movements hesitant as if it recognized the awakening force within her. Alicia opened her eyes, her vision filled with light, and for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt power, her power, and it surged through her, strong and undeniable. Kalen stepped closer, his hand still lightly touching hers. "You see," he said quietly, "you are not just a survivor. You are something greater, something this kingdom has never seen before." Alicia's voice trembled as she spoke. I can feel it. I don't understand it, but it's like a part of me I never knew existed." The shadow hissed, a sound that sent a shiver down her spine. It moved faster now, circling around her like a predator testing its prey. But Alicia no longer felt small or weak. She felt connected to something ancient, something strong, something that had been waiting for her to awaken. Kalen's hand tightened on the sword hilt. "Be ready," he said. "It may strike physically, but its true power is to test your mind and heart. Stand strong." Alicia's gaze met the shadows, and she lifted her chin, no longer trembling. She felt the pulse in her scars growing stronger, a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. It was as if the energy inside her recognized the presence of the dark figure and was ready to respond. The shadow lunged, but before it could reach her, a burst of light flared from her body. It was not blinding, but brilliant and warm, radiating outward in waves that pushed the darkness back. The figure stumbled, retreating a step, and Alicia felt a thrill of both fear and triumph. "Do not hold back," Kalen urged, his voice calm but forceful. "Let it flow. Let yourself embrace what you are." Alicia closed her eyes again, focusing on the energy inside her. She let it pour out, surrounding her like a shield of soft, radiant light. The shadow shrieked, a sound that echoed through the chamber, and then it paused as if sizing her up, recognizing that she was no longer the same person who had entered the castle only hours ago. Her scars pulsed with warmth, and she felt a connection to the very stones of the castle, to the air, and even to Kalen beside her. She realized with a shock that her power was not just within her, it was connected to everything around her. The castle, the land, the people, all of it responded to the awakening force she carried. The shadow hissed once more, its movement slowing as it circled her. Then, with a final, almost reluctant gesture, it dissipated into the shadows, leaving the chamber bathed in the soft glow of her light. Alicia sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated, her body trembling with the intensity of the awakening. Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced it and you embraced yourself. This is only the beginning, but you have taken the first step toward mastering what you carry." Alicia took a deep breath, still kneeling, her eyes wide with awe. I never knew I could." "This," she whispered, her fingers tracing the glow of her scars. "All these years. I thought I was broken. I thought I was alone." "You were never alone," Kalen said, his voice steady and reassuring. "Even in the shadows, even in hiding, your strength was alive, and now, you know it." For the first time, Alicia felt a sense of belonging, not just to the castle, not just to the king, but to herself. She had spent a decade believing her scars marked weakness, but now she understood they were marks of power, resilience, and survival. They were part of her, and they had waited for the right moment to awaken. Kalen helped her to her feet, his eyes searching hers. "There will be more tests," he said. "More shadows, more challenges. But you are ready. And I will be by your side every step of the way." Alicia nodded, a newfound determination settling in her chest. The fear that had gripped her for so long was still there, a quiet whisper in the back of her mind, but it was no longer overwhelming. She had faced the darkness and found strength within herself that she had never imagined. Outside the chamber, the wind howled through the castle towers, carrying the faint scent of rain and stone. But inside, Alicia felt a calm that was stronger than the storm. She was no longer hiding, no longer afraid. She had embraced her scars, her past, and the power that had been waiting for her all along. Kalen stood beside her, his hand still lightly resting on hers. "The court will not understand what has happened here," he said. "They will see only the surface, only what they think they know. But that does not matter. You know the truth. And that is what matters. Elysia nodded, feeling the pulse of her power calm into a steady rhythm. She looked at Kaelin, a question forming in her mind. "And what about you?" she asked softly. "Have you faced something like this?" Kaelin's gaze darkened slightly, a shadow crossing his expression. "Yes," he said quietly, "in my own way. And it taught me that strength is not just about surviving. It is about embracing what you are, even when the world fears it." Elysia studied him, seeing not just the king, but the man who had faced his own darkness and emerged stronger. A quiet respect and connection blossomed between them, unspoken but undeniable. For the first time, she felt that perhaps she could trust someone completely, not just with her secrets, but with her future. As the glow from her scars faded, leaving only the soft traces of light that marked her skin, Elysia realized something profound. She was no longer the same woman who had hidden in the shadows for 10 years. She had awakened to her own power, embraced her scars, and begun to see herself as someone capable of shaping her destiny. The castle trembled under the wind that carried whispers of approaching danger. Elysia stood beside Kaelin in the high chamber overlooking the battlements, her scars glowing faintly in the dim torchlight. The glow pulsed with her heartbeat steady and strong. She had embraced the power that had been dormant for so long. But now she understood that power was not only for protection, it was a responsibility. Kaelin's hand brushed hers, a steadying touch. "They are coming," he said softly. "The forces that have watched you for years. They know you are awake now, and they will not wait." Elysia's gaze swept the horizon. Shadows moved through the forest below the castle, faster than any ordinary man could run, flickers of dark energy marking their path. The air itself seemed heavy, thick with tension. She felt the pulse of her own power, a rhythm that matched the faint hum of magic in the world around her. "I am ready," she said, her voice firm, stronger than she had expected. "Whatever comes, I can face it." Kaelin nodded, his eyes dark with the weight of command. "Then we face it together, not as king and subject, but as equals. You have earned that, Elysia." The first strike came like a shadow tearing across the stones. A dark figure leapt onto the battlements, moving faster than human eyes could follow. Its presence radiated ancient power, and the wind around it seemed to shiver in fear. Elysia's scars flared brightly, a protective aura that spread across her body. She could feel the energy surge, answering to her instinctively. Kaelin moved beside her, sword drawn, his stance steady. "Do not fear," he whispered. "Let it feel your strength. Let it see you are not the girl who hid for 10 years. The shadow lunged. Elysia raised her hands instinctively, and a wave of light erupted from her body. The figure stumbled back, hissing as her glow expanded, filling the battlement with radiant warmth. The clash of energies sent sparks across the stone, and Elysia felt a thrill of exhilaration. She stepped forward, letting the light flow through her. Her scars pulsed in rhythm, and she realized that this force, the power she had hidden, was no longer under her control alone. It was part of her, alive and responsive, a guardian and a weapon combined. The shadow recovered quickly, striking again, but Kaelin met it with his sword. Their movements synchronized like two halves of a single force. He guided her subtly but did not interfere, allowing her to harness the full strength of her awakening. Together they formed a bond of light and steel, facing the darkness with unyielding resolve. "You are strong," Kaelin said, his voice steady over the hum of power. "Stronger than I could have imagined. But remember, it is not just strength that will save you. It is courage and the truth of who you are." Elysia's heart pounded. The truth of herself, her scars, her survival, her journey was now a weapon, a shield, and a promise all at once. She no longer hid in shadows. She had faced fire, betrayal, and her own fear and emerged whole, powerful, and determined. The shadow lunged one final time, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. Elysia closed her eyes briefly, drawing every memory of survival, every lesson of 10 years alone into herself. She opened her eyes, and the light of her scars flared like the sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadow screamed, recoiling from the force, and then dissipated into the night, leaving only a faint wisp of smoke and the echo of its rage. The battlements were quiet once more, save for the wind and the distant howl of night creatures. Elysia sank to her knees, exhausted, but the glow in her scars lingered, warm and steady. Kaelin knelt beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced the darkness and emerged victorious, not just with power but with heart." She looked up at him, her chest rising and falling rapidly. I never knew I could do this, she whispered. All these years, I thought I was weak. I thought my scars made me less than human. Kaylin's eyes softened, filled with something deeper than admiration, something that spoke of respect, awe, and perhaps even love. You were never weak, he said. Your scars are not marks of shame. They are proof of your courage, your endurance, and your spirit. And now, the world will see you as I see you, whole, powerful, extraordinary. Elysia felt a surge of emotion that left her momentarily breathless. She had hidden for 10 years, afraid that the world would reject her. And yet here was a man, a king, who not only accepted her but honored her strength. Kaylin, she began, her voice trembling. I don't know what the future holds. But I know. I don't want to face it alone anymore. He smiled faintly, the first true unguarded smile she had seen. You will not face it alone, he said. We face it together, and whatever comes, you will never be forced to hide again. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain and stone, and with it came a sense of calm, as if the storm had passed. Elysia stood, her scars glowing faintly in the torchlight, and she realized something profound. She was no longer the girl who hid. She was a woman who had survived, who had faced her fears, and who now held the power to shape her destiny. Kaylin extended his hand, and she took it, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. Together they looked out over the kingdom, the moonlight casting silver across the towers and forests. The darkness had come, and she had faced it, not as a victim, but as a survivor, as a warrior, as someone who had earned her place in the world. You are ready, Kaylin said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made her heart ache in the best possible way. Ready to lead, ready to protect, ready to be seen for who you truly are. Elysia nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. I think I am, she said. Thanks to you. Thanks to your faith in me. Kaylin's eyes softened, and he stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face. No, he said gently. Thanks to you. You trusted yourself when it mattered most, and that is why you are stronger than anyone could have imagined. For a long moment they stood there, hand in hand, the quiet of the castle surrounding them. No words were needed. The bond between them, forged through trust, courage, and the awakening of her power, was unspoken but undeniable. Outside, the forest was still, the night calm after the storm of shadows. Elysia realized that she had not only survived, but she had grown, transformed. Her scars were no longer marks of pain. They were symbols of strength, endurance, and the journey she had taken to claim her destiny. Kaylin finally spoke, his voice low and steady. The kingdom will need you, Elysia, and so will I. But remember this, power is not enough. Courage, wisdom, and heart, these will guide you far more than any sword or magic ever could. Elysia felt a warmth in her chest, a deep, steady certainty she had never known. I understand, she said, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next. Kaylin smiled faintly, his gaze unwavering. Then the next chapter begins, he said, and it will be unlike anything you have ever known. But you will not face it alone, not now, not ever. Elysia's hand tightened around his. She looked at her scars, glowing faintly, and then at the king beside her. For the first time in 10 years, she felt whole, seen, and unafraid. The darkness had come and tested her, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace her destiny. And as the first light of dawn began to creep across the horizon, the castle stood silent and watchful, a symbol of the strength, courage, and enduring spirit of the woman who had hidden for 10 years, and who would now lead with fire in her heart and light in her scars. The shadows may have waited, and danger may still come, but Elysia had faced her fears, embraced her scars, and discovered the extraordinary power that had always been hers. And with Kaylin by her side, she knew one thing for certain: she would never hide again,